What's going on, everybody? C4 here. Welcome back to the channel. And it's time to put on our negative hats, as today, following up the earlier video where we gave every team's best pick, in my opinion, and their overall draft grade, it is time to talk about the bad picks. The picks for every team, all 32 teams that I disagree with, I thought was their worst selection. Now, this does not always mean, in some cases it does, but it does not always mean I dislike the player. It would just be, it was a weird pick. Too weird for me to like. Why is the value there? You know, you got that guy way too early kind of thing. And in a rare case, it's like, okay, did not even have this guy as a draftable player, but you got him in the 5th round. Some questions need to be answered. So if you are looking for the positive stuff, if you are looking for the overall grades, I dropped that video earlier. But without further ado, let's go through all the new teams through the power of ESPN.com here. And I'll give you, in my opinion, the worst selection for each team. Starting with the Arizona Cardinals, I thought the worst pick was Leki Fotu here in the 4th round because you're doubling up on 2 players who fit really the same role. Lawrence more likely is going to be a smaller nose tackle. Fotu, bigger nose tackle. I just feel like I like Lawrence a little bit more as a run defender. Fotu was inconsistent, kind of disappointed last year. So I would argue just the value of getting 2 very similar players here could have spread it out just a little bit, but ultimately, and like you're going to see for a couple of these teams, some teams didn't really have any bad picks. Like really, when all said and done, is it a bad thing to have 2 really solid looking D linemen here? Not at all, but I would just argue maybe just get 1 D tackle and look at addressing another spot. You could have went maybe bringing in a guard here. You could have looked at another corner, for example. So I'm just arguing the positional value, but I like both Fotu and Lawrence as prospects. Looking at the Atlanta Falcons, their worst selection for me, not A.J. Terrell in the 1st round, even though that raised a lot of eyebrows. I think it's entirely plausible to have him as corner 3, and he was picked as such, even though that value's a little weird. But I'm going to go Jalen Hawkins out of Cal. I just think he's an average player, and they got him in the 4th round. I didn't even have a draftable grade. I thought he was a UDFA, had an okay year, I think 2 years ago at Cal, but since then has been outshined by Ashton Davis. I just think in the 4th round, that was a massive reach here for the Atlanta Falcons for a player on my draft boards I did not even have draftable. Baltimore, always tough to pick on the Baltimore Ravens because they always draft incredibly well. If I had to find one, it'd be Tyree Phillips here in the 3rd round out of Mississippi State. Tackle guard, depending on where you really value him at. Pick 106, though. I had him more as a developmental guy. 6th round, 7th round, somewhere in that territory. Not the 3rd round. Obviously, they might have saw something I didn't. And I would definitely trust the Baltimore Ravens all said and done because they are the premier drafting team. But, yeah, I think especially when you look at like Duvernay, Malik Harrison, and then even Ben Bredesen. Those are guys I all had rated fairly high. And then Tyree Phillips kind of slam dab right in the middle of it. I think they could have got better value at that tackle spot. And 3rd round, too rich for my blood for Tyree Phillips. Buffalo Bills, the Buffalo Bills, their worst selection in my opinion. There was no real bad one, so I'm just going to default to the kicker. They got Tyler Bass, had a good leg on him, but you took him over. First of all, drafting a kicker, always pretty suspect, especially in the 6th round. Wait to the 7th. And Goggles, Goggles was sitting there. Rodrigo Blankenship, you didn't get him. So we're going to be a little bit overly critical here for the Buffalo Bills and de facto to the kicker because generally not a bad pick there for the Buffalo Bills. Carolina now up, and I know a lot of Panther fans are like, why didn't we get Isaiah Simmons? It should be Derek Brown, but I actually highlighted Derek Brown as I thought he was their best selection. Nice, safe selection. Worst pick, this one's tough because I think they had a really good draft. I would argue it's Bravion Roy, who I actually really do like Bravion Roy as a nose tackle. I think he could start sooner or later, but he's a Matt Rule guy. I felt like there's a little bit of, when Chip Kelly, when he's here in Philadelphia, to get his Oregon Ducks. I feel like Bravion Roy, given how the draft was going in the 6th and 7th round, probably was trending more likely to be a UDFA. And I felt like this was more of a move that Matt Rule wanted to get one of his guys in this draft so that there was a chance he didn't get drafted late. I would just argue, there's a little bit of that Baylor bias, which is not a bad thing because I think Bravion Roy is a solid prospect. I actually had him as one of my more underrated run-stuffing D linemen, but I would argue for a team that did not have really any bad picks, you might have been able to get him as a UDFA. Looking at the Chicago Bears. Okay, well, this is actually something that Bengal was talking about on Twitter, and it made complete sense. A lot of people are bringing up Cole Kmet as a bad pick. Like, oh, why'd they get another tight end? But they don't have a good one. So, I guess it is annoying that this team has struggled to find a tight end that they keep using, premier assets to actually get a tight end, which you could argue that's not great. But for me, no real bad picks. I mean, maybe a little, Gibson in the 5th, a little rich. Vildor in the 5th, maybe slightly rich. Mooney in the 5th, rich, going on the speed there. But I'm going to say just worst pick is this guy, Latavius Simmons. Never heard of him. So, yeah, never heard of him. He's going to de facto, and there's no real brutal pick. I'm going to go with the guy that never heard of. Cincinnati Bengals. Worst pick here for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to say, again, no real consensus bad pick. I'll just go Logan Wilson because of the investment. They use him in the 3rd round, but they're able to get Davis Gaither in the 4th, able to get Marcus Bailey in the 7th. All guys I had well within my top 10 linebackers in this year's draft class. So I would just argue if you just eliminate Logan Wilson, who I think is a really good player. I thought Philly was going to get him in the 3rd round. I think 3rd round, 4th rounds about the value. The value is not bad. Just the issue is that if you just look at the back and you work your way up, right? Marcus Bailey, if he can get healthy, this is a value linebacker pick. It's like, all right, Akeem Davis Gaither. This is a guy that, for some people had a 2nd round grade. I thought he was a 3rd round pick, but either way, really, really solid modern day linebacker. You're like, all right, we got 2 linebackers. And then it's like, oh, we got another linebacker. So, I mean, Logan Wilson could end up the most talented of this bunch, but I'll just put him here because that 3rd round pick may have been better used at a different position, and you'd be satisfied with Davis Gaither and Marcus Bailey as your linebacker. But it was a position that the Bengals needed to correct, and this is very much me just trying to nitpick the positional value, because from a player standpoint, Logan Wilson could very well end up a rookie starter for that Cincinnati Bengals team. They got Jermaine Pratt last year, really liked him, but outside of that, it's kind of open season. Cleveland Browns. What was the worst pick for the Browns? Let's see here. I have it as Harrison Bryant. I actually think slightly underrated run blocker. I think he's slightly underrated as a complete tight end because he's the Mackey winner, more of a receiver, but brings an ideal size. It's not the player that's the issue here. It's just the positional addressing. What are you doing? You have David Njoku, 1st round pick, still trying to develop him, still has a high ceiling. You paid Austin Hooper, made him the most expensive, and yet you use still a nice valuable pick here in the 4th round on another tight end. I just don't get it. It's a weird selection addressing tight. If you want to add another one, get him later. Why not? Why are you making an investment in a 4th round? 4th rounders can start. They got Mack Wilson, 4th, 5th round last year, and now he's just starting linebacker. So I would just argue Harrison Bryant getting a tight end in the 4th round, not the best value there for the Cleveland Browns. Dallas gave it an A+. I thought it was one of the best drafts, if not the best draft. So we're just nitpicking. Ben DiNucci, did not think he was a draftable quarterback. I actually watched JMU twice during the playoffs, and this guy was not good in that final game, the championship game, which actually was kind of bad. He did not look impressive against North Dakota State. So I just thought that was a little bit of a weird selection there for sure, especially with like Tyler Huntley, maybe better, more athletic QB2s that could develop behind Dak that fit that scheme, that style. But other than that, if we just get rid of that 7th pick, insane draft from Dallas. Denver Broncos, another team that drafted very, very well. If I had to find a bet, I would say McTelvin Agim in the 3rd round. I just did not have a 3rd round grade on him. Maybe a little bit of a reach. I had a 6th round, 5th, 6th round, somewhere in that territory. Does fit their front 3, though. Will be a defensive end in that scheme. Generally, a really good draft. I mean, this is going to be a team that when we do the best teams value pick, we're going to be talking about a lot of the picks for the Denver Broncos. I think definitely a top 5 draft in the NFL. And if I just had to look at where did I disagree with value, it'd be a game in the 3rd round. Detroit, another team, not a lot to complain about. I'm going with the guy with the most awkward name of the team, John Penis Innie from Utah. I just did not have a draftable grade on him. They got him in the 6th round. Other than that, it just comes down to that. You're going to see that for a bunch of teams. A bunch of the teams that did not have, I thought a lot of teams had solid to good to even great drafts. So it's just going to be more so their de facto worst pick will be a guy that I didn't have a draftable grade on, and that is John Penis Innie from Utah. Really good value here, though. I like Huntley was great value. He was one of my top receiving backs. I had the mock getting Quintez Cephas. They got some good linemen there as well. Could argue the DeAndre Swift pick was a little bit weird with Kerryon Johnson, with Bo Scarborough there. But that is for another time. Not bad enough for me because the talent is there to just highlight a guy I had a UDFA grade on that they picked in the 6th. Green Bay. Worst pick? Almost all of them. But if I had to pick one, it'd be A.J. Dillon. I had a 4th round grade. He'd be like an insane value running back in the 4th round. Could have went in the 3rd round because he tested well at the combine. Not to a team that already has 2 running backs. Aaron Jones, they got Williams there. Running backs would be the strength of this offense. And they go and get another one. And then they get Josiah DeGuara, who I actually think is pretty underrated, but he's a 6'2 tight end. You have Jay Sternberger. Get a tight end here. I thought personally you could get DeGuara down here somewhere. They get Kamal Martin, average pick. And there's a bunch of average picks. There's no value here whatsoever. You would argue big reach on DeGuara in the 3rd round, big reach on Dillon in the 2nd round. But Dillon for position of, it just makes what a bad. I gave it an F, and it sucks because I think Dillon's a really nice player. I think he's a great power back. Reminds me of James Conner. But why? Why, if you're Green Bay, do you make that selection? Houston Texans are up here. Worst pick I have for Houston is Charlie Heck in the 4th round. I had him as a late round developmental tackle, yet they get him in the 4th for a team that does not have a lot of premier picks. Little weird. It's pretty weird. They're going to pay Larry Tunsil as a left tackle. I don't know. You're going to make I don't know who the right tackle is going to be, if I'm going to be honest with you, but it's probably not going to be Charlie Heck. He's like a year away from being a year away. John Reed, I like him as a slot guy. 4th round, though, a little bit. I mean, he did help himself with the combine values. I don't know, but Heck's the worst of the bunch for an average to above average Houston Texan draft. Colts are up here, drafted very well from top to bottom. I love seeing my boy Blackman go there. Great value here. So I'm just going to say Jordan Glasgow in the 6th round. Just did not have a draftable grade on the Michigan linebacker. Just at this point, nitpicking. Rodgers out of UMass could also be, he's more of a special teamer, though, so I got that selection. Day 3, you can get guys that are special teamers first. And for Glasgow, I don't know. It was a little bit of a weird pick, but generally, top to bottom, safe, good, effective draft for the Indianapolis Colts. Jacksonville Jaguars, worst pick for the Jags. Either getting Shaq Quarterman, old school style linebacker. I like him as a player, but he's an old school style. He's getting phased out. You don't get linebackers that are run stuffers on the fourth round. He's going to be an early down linebacker. He's got struggling coverage, not a great athlete. I do like him. I mean, he has a great highlight reel. If you want to see, it looks like linebackers from 2002. He just destroys players across the middle. But in the 4th round, for a guy that's not going to be ever a guy that's on the field all three downs, because he'll just get picked on in coverage, I would just argue the value there for a 4th round. But I do like the player in Shaq Quarterman. Kansas City, worst pick here for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to say Mike Dana in the 5th. I thought Mike Dana would be a guy transferred from Central Michigan where he had a huge season. Then he went to Michigan, didn't do much at all. I feel like a guy's coming off a nothing season. I had, late, 7th UDFA on him with some upside, but 5th round, too big of an investment for my blood here from the Kansas City Chiefs. Chargers are up. This is going to be a little bit of a hot takey, but the worst pick for me is Kenneth Murray. I cannot get behind the value. 2nd and 3rd round to trade up. You're trading your pretty much all day 2 to trade up and get in them. And Kenneth Murray is going to be a solid player for them. Linebacker is a position they wanted to solidify. It's just the value. The value is absurd, especially when you look at the debate. In my opinion, the best linebacker in the class, in Patrick Queen, just fell to the Baltimore Ravens at pick 28. They didn't have to trade anything. They still had their 2nd, 3rd round picks. But then, I don't know. It's not the player that's the issue here. I think Murray is going to be a solid fit for them. It's just the valuation of a 2 and a. I mean, they're lucky. They drafted well. Getting Josh Kelly in the 4th round is really good value for what I think he's going to bring to their backfield. So they didn't get burned necessarily from giving up a 2nd and 3rd to get back up into the 1st round. It's just what they gave up to get Kenneth Murray. I don't know. I don't think it was that great. But the player's good. Next up, how do I get out of this? We have the Rams. And my worst pick here for the Rams, I thought they got a lot of value across the board, so I'm just going to go kicker. With Goggles still on the board, you go, guy never heard of? Come on, pick Goggles. Absolutely pick Goggles. But solid draft across the board there for the Rams. For the Vegas Raiders, worst pick is Damon Arnett. While it's, from a scheme standpoint, kind of makes sense. He fits their scheme. There's just no, I had a solid 3rd round grade at best on Damon Arnett. Them getting him in the 1st round, questionable, highly questionable, especially given the corners that were still on the board. And this is a pick, it's from the Khalil Mack trade. You really want this guy to be your next shutdown, lockdown corner at pick 19, because every player that you get from that Khalil Mack trade is going to be used in comparison to Khalil Mack. And I feel like Damon Arnett is not, it's not it, Chief. It's not the value. So if you are looking at this as a Raider fan, you probably already know this was not a great pick in terms of value. But, I guess you could kind of view it like Daniel Jones. It is a fit. Schematically, His style does fit the Raiders defense, which is good. Just you probably still could have got him in the third round. Well, maybe not third round, but you could have got him in the second round. Absolutely not at pick 19. Miami Dolphins. Worst pick for the Dolphins here. I'm going Ibagnahi, the corner from Auburn. The value, they got him from the Green Bay Packers. I just don't see the value here in adding another corner with one. You have to help Tua. This is a new era. Hashtag tank for Tua. You get Austin Jackson, which you could debate was not the right tackle pick, but at least they went tackle. Here at corner, you have Xavier Howard, one of the top paid corners in his prime. You have Byron Jones, so they just brought in a free agency, top paid corner in his prime, is really getting another corner in the first round. You could get a corner in the third round. That's still like a pretty big investment to a team that already has 2 lockdown corners. Nick Needham, too, in the slot was solid last year, one of the surprising players on that Dolphins defense. So the value's all off. I mean, the value to the team is all off because Bonnie was getting mocked late first round, early second round, but just it's the worst pick here for Miami. Should have done a better job at helping Tua out. Minnesota, worst pick for Minnesota. Again, really solid draft. I always loved the Vikings draft. I'm just gonna go Brandell there in the 6th round. I just did not have a draftable grade on him. Other than that, I mean, just really annoying draft as an Eagle fan because I got a lot of guys I wanted day 3. Did well in the first couple of rounds as well. I got value here in Dantzler, guy that tanked at the combine. Probably was going to be a second round. They got him in the 3rd round. So really, we're just kind of picking at, okay, who did I not have draftable? And it was this guy. Moving on to the New England Patriots. Worst pick for the Patriots. I'm going Dalton Keene. I think he was an interesting player. Did a lot of things for Virginia Tech. Fullback, tight end, hybrid. Tested well at the combine. Looked pretty good during the drills. But not after you just get a tight end here. Weird pick for the Patriots. Go tight end for sure. I think a lot of scouts like Ossie think his upside's there. Obviously, the size is intriguing, but going back-to-back tight ends, it's not so much a reflection on Dalton Keene. It's just a reflection on how the Patriots decide to draft. Very questionable day 3 for New England. New Orleans, worst pick for New Orleans. I'm going Cesar Ruiz. Great player, top center in the draft. I would just argue if you're the Saints, interior offensive line, that's where you decide to go. You didn't want to bring in a younger wide receiver. Like if you're thinking long term, especially given the strength of wide receiver in this class, you didn't want to bring in maybe a corner. You didn't want to bring in an inside linebacker like Patrick Queen was here. You went inside on the O line. I would just argue against the value, but the player is fine, and I assume they're going to move probably Eric because you had Eric McCoy. He was one of your best value picks last year, so I assume you're going to make McCoy a guard. Ruiz will be center along with Andrew Speed, who you just played, and they'll probably find a way to get some salary cap freed up by moving on from Warford. But I would just argue maybe not the best value for New Orleans here in the first round. Giants, worst pick for the Giants. I'm going Matt Peart in the 3rd round. He's a developmental tackle in every sense of the word. Clearly, he's a long-term play for him. Maybe be the successor to Nate Solder, because by the time he comes around, maybe that's going to be time that you can get out of Nate Solder's horrific contract. But I would just argue 3rd round for a developmental tackle when you have still a lot of needs for the Giants, and given who was still on the board in the 3rd round. You did well by getting Holmes and Shane Lemieux. I thought those are 2 really solid picks there, but I would argue the value for Matt Peart in the 3rd round, not that great. The Jets, if you watched my first video, I gave them the 2nd A+ with the Dallas Cowboys. Worst pick for them, I'll just say getting a backup quarterback, James Morgan in the 4th round. I had a 6th round grade on him. He was one of the more highly regarded backups. So the value, I guess, for what they need in a backup quarterback is not bad. I just think 4th round, if they had to pick a weak pick out of what I think is from top to bottom, maybe the best draft here. Congrats, Joe Douglas. Thanks for having Joe Douglas. Hopefully Adam Gase does not ruin all these talent guys. I would just say getting Sam Darnold's backup in the 4th round, maybe a little rich. Philadelphia, worst pick. Hey, it's Jalen Hurts. We've already talked about this in length. I'm not going to hold you up here for 5 minutes. It was the single worst pick in the draft. Single worst pick in the draft. I hope again, and that's all that's gonna be said. I'm not gonna consistently hope like, oh man, I hope Jalen Hurts gets hurt. Man, I hope this happens. Hey, find a way to help the team. Make this pick not the worst pick. But right now, the optics, it's the worst pick in the draft. Pittsburgh, worst pick for Pittsburgh. I actually think low-key, I didn't really like the Steelers draft. I didn't mind the players, but if I had to find the worst pick, I would say getting Highsmith maybe in the 3rd round. He's a guy that a lot of people thought it was like a day 3 value pick, but getting him when you don't have a 1st rounder, you have limited picks. I thought I kind of had like a 5th round. He'd be like a solid 5th round. Getting him in the 3rd, I didn't really agree with the valuation there, and maybe even Chase Claypool, who you're gambling on the athlete there, not so much the production. Not so much the actual, like, he doesn't play as fast as he is. But I'm going to be biased, and I'm not going to talk bad about him because he is Canadian. Seattle. I give Seattle one of my 2 failing grades. Worst pick is Jordan Brooks. I think Jordan Brooks, solid linebacker, not a first-round player. I definitely think they could have got him at pick 16 in the second round. It would have been better optics for that. They could have got him in the second round, and they got him. It's just Seattle doing Seattle things. It's not a good pick for a team that struggled to draft the last couple years. Looking at the 49ers, worst pick for the Niners. I'm just gonna say it's McKivitz. They didn't have a whole lot of picks, and again, this is kind of like, all right. Warner in the 6th, blocking tight end. Jennings in the 7th, not bad. So it was just elimination. I had to give it. No team can get an NA. I had 7th round UDFA on McKivitz, and they got him in the 5th. But hey, you got Trent Williams. You don't really need him to play much. Tampa Bay, worst pick for the Bucs. I'm just going to say the valuation here. I don't think Keyshawn Vaughn was a 3rd round running back, especially with some of the other running backs that were still available on the board. I think he's solid, but if you're the Bucs, you're still looking for your long-term starter, unless they find a way to make a trade or something like that. And I don't know. Vaughn has an outside chance to maybe eventually get that gig. Did not look as good. If this was 2 years ago, maybe my opinion would be different. He did not look that explosive last year because he was a home run hitter for Vandy 2 years ago. Last year, obviously teams were just stacking the boxes. He was their offense, but I thought he was going to be more so a 5th round guy. If like you would switch Vaughn with Johnson or Davis, it might make a little more sense. But just in the 3rd round, I did not have him as a 3rd round player. But he's upside. I guess if I had to say, when all said and done, would I be shocked if Vaughn leads them in touches of the backfield this year? Wouldn't say anything. Tennessee, worst pick for them. I'm staying right here, Isaiah Wilson. I admire them going tackle, trying to replace Jack Conklin. I did not have a first-round grade of Wilson. I know there was some buzz a little bit later that Wilson was going to emerge as a potential first-round pick, but he's big. Right now, he's big. And it's going to take a lot of work for him to get to, Trent Brown territory. So it's a long-term play, and I would argue with some of the tackles still on the board here, or some of the tackles that, obviously looking back in hindsight, Wilson in the first round, definitely, especially pick 29, a little too rich for my blood. And then finishing up with the Washington Redskins, worst pick for the Redskins, I'm going Sadiq Charles in the 4th round, guy with some character issues. These are guys that usually slip into day 3. They need a tackle, especially with trading off from Trent Williams. Josh Jones was here. I like Gibson. He brings great dimension, great speed, utility player, but I would argue you needed a tackle. You knew that you were trading Trent Williams, and you get a guy with character issues that I thought was probably, 4th is not a super big reach for him. He was going to be, late day 2, early day 3, mid day 3 type pick. It's not a huge reach. Wasn't like I had a UDFA grade. He did play for the national champions. I would just argue that if this was the tackle, the planet tackle could have been better. Could have been addressed better. And the 4th round at pick 2, a little rich for my blood on Sadiq Charles. So there you go, guys. Those are the worst picks that I thought, in my opinion, for all 32 teams in the 2020 NFL Draft. Let me know if you agree with them. Make a debate, maybe more so that, the guy you said sucked, I think he's going to be amazing. Let me know in the comment section below. But that'll do it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching. We'll be back a little bit later tonight with the final video of this series where we talk about the best value pick, the steal, if you will, for each team from the 2020 draft. We'll be back there a little bit later. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if it's your first time stopping by. Smash that like button if you enjoyed. Until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.